Today on Down to the Wire, fight to the finish. Teams battle for final playoff positioning as the NHL regular season comes to an end. Today is Friday, April 11th, 2014. I'm Shawn and this is Andrés, and this is episode 13 of Down to the Wire. The NHL season, only 3 days left, and the playoff positionings aren't set yet. Let's start with the Eastern Conference, and how do you think this is going to end?
Well, there's a positioning up for grabs in both conferences. There's still not a lot that hasn't been settled yet. There's certain teams, though, that have everything locked up. Boston in the East for sure, finishing top spot. There's no question of that. That's already decided. But there's still a lot of questions about home ice advantage as well as the wild cards. So I think that in the East, in the Atlantic Division, you're definitely going to have Boston at the top. I think it's going to finish the way it is right now. You're going to have Montreal and Tampa after that. Montreal is at home against the Rangers for the last game. I think they'll have that one. And then Tampa is going to have Columbus at home. I actually think they're going to lose that one based on their season so far, their record against the Blue Jackets, and because Bobrovsky has been playing so well, and because Bishop is hurt. Then they're going to go to Washington, and I actually think they'll have that one. Washington being eliminated from the playoffs, I don't think. Obviously, they're going to go out to play, but Tampa's going to want that one more, so they'll get that one, and they'll finish in third place.
Well, for me, I have in the Atlantic, Boston obviously finishing first. I have Montreal finishing second, home ice advantage against Tampa. And yep, Tampa finishing third for me.
In the Metropolitan Division, I have Pittsburgh at the top. I think they'll be winning both of their games at home against Philly and then against the Senators. The Rangers, for me, will finish where they are right now. Losing their last game against Montreal, but having just enough in regular overtime win points to finish in the second spot. And in last spot in the Metropolitan Division, the Blue Jackets. I think the Blue Jackets will get out of the wild card spot, climb into the Metropolitan Division, and with away wins, I think, against both Tampa and Florida, they'll get that third spot and meet the Rangers in the playoffs.
I have a bit of a difference. I have Pittsburgh finishing on top. I have the Rangers finishing second with 96 points. And I have the Flyers instead of Columbus in there. Reason being, I think the Flyers can pull off a win against Pittsburgh. They have won the past 3 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I think they will pull it off again, and they will finish in third in the Metropolitan Division.
Now for the wild cards. Since I have Columbus moving up, I have Philadelphia moving down. I think Philadelphia will get regular overtime win points over Detroit, my last wild card spot, being the other team that's gone into the playoffs. But again, I think Philly is going to get that win in Pittsburgh. They're not going to get the win in Pittsburgh, but they are going to beat Carolina in their last game. Detroit, meanwhile, has Carolina as well. I think that's going to be an easy win for them also, as Carolina's pretty low in the standings. But then they have to go face the Blues in St. Louis, and St. Louis, and I don't think they're going to get that win. So they'll both finish on 93 points, but the row is going to go to Philadelphia. So that said, Philadelphia will end up facing Pittsburgh in the playoffs, as Pittsburgh is the second best division-leading team, and Detroit will end up facing Boston, as they will be the worst wild card.
I have Columbus and Detroit both sitting at 93, but yes, Columbus will finish ahead of Detroit in the wild card positioning based on regular overtime wins. So Columbus 93 facing Pittsburgh, and Detroit's going to be facing Boston, which should be a really interesting matchup, I might add.
That might have been all confusing, so let's just draw it out quickly what the bracket would look like. For me, we have Boston and Detroit, the Habs against the Lightning, that one's for sure. Then I would have Pittsburgh against Philly. Shawn has Pittsburgh against Columbus. And my last matchup would be the Rangers and the Blue Jackets, while Shawn has Rangers and Flyers. Now over to the West. Let's start with you this time around.
Okay, so for the Central Division, I have the Colorado Avalanche finishing first with 114 points. St. Louis finishing just behind them with 113 points, and Chicago finishing in third with 111 points.
I have the same spots. I have the Avs, the Blues, and the Blackhawks, just slightly different points. I think the Avs will also finish first, but I think they'll finish tied in points with the Blues. The West is really interesting, the last matchups that they have. I think the Avs, they have 2 away games, first against San Jose and then Colorado. For the Blues, they've got Dallas away and Detroit at home. Dallas is trying to get into that last playoff spot. They're fighting it out with Phoenix. I think Dallas will get that win, but the Blues will definitely win in Detroit for me. And finally, the Blackhawks have Washington and Nashville. I think they've got both of those games.
Over to the Pacific Division, and I have Anaheim finishing on top with 114 points, which would tie them with Colorado, but Anaheim would go ahead with regular overtime points. And the Sharks finishing in second with 109 points, and LA finishing in third with 99 points.
I have the same placement again, Ducks, Sharks, and then the Kings. But I think Ducks are actually going to get both of their games. I think they can beat the Kings away and then the Avs at home. So even though that's a back-to-back, I think they can pull it off, and they'll definitely get the top spot in the Western Conference.
The wild cards, I have Minnesota sitting at the first wild card position with 100 points, and Dallas sitting in the second wild card position with 91 points, which would mean Dallas versus Anaheim and Colorado versus Minnesota.
I have the same thing, reason being that Phoenix, although they both have 2 games left, 2 tough games, Phoenix facing San Jose and Dallas getting the Blues and the Coyotes. Phoenix has lost 2 of their last 10 games, and even though they're at home for both of their games, I don't think they're getting a win out of either one. They'll be hungry, but they're not going to get into the last playoff spot. So to recap that, playoff brackets, I have the Ducks and the Stars, the Sharks and the Kings, although that one's already a given, the Avs and the Wild, and finally the Blues and the Blackhawks. And
same with us.
Sean has the exact same thing. The most interesting matchups?
Yep, and we'll start with you for that one.
Alright, so in the Eastern Conference, I have Philly going against Pittsburgh. That one's always a classic, gets really heated, so for me that one's easily going to be the best matchup of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference.
It's a tough one. If it does end up the way Andrés says it will end up, I think that will be the best matchup. But if it ends up the way I see it, it would be probably Tampa versus Montreal, the top matchup in the East. And it's been a good matchup all season long, and it's going to be really interesting in the playoffs to see who could come on top, because Montreal does tend to struggle a little bit when it comes to home ice.
In the Western Conference, Sean and I have the same matchup for the most intriguing head-to-head with St. Louis going against Chicago. Chicago is always a great playoff team. I mean, they won the Cup twice in recent years, while the Blues are heading into this with much less experience.
Yep.
They'll probably finish with a better record, more points, but they've been struggling lately, and I don't know, the Blues could have an early exit easily against the Blackhawks.
Especially if, which is probably going to happen, Kane and Taves both expected to come back to Chicago for the playoffs. So, with that being said, I think Chicago will defeat St. Louis. St. Louis has been struggling lately, and they're showing signs that maybe lack of experience will come into play in the playoffs. So, especially Ryan Miller, not a playoff goalie. He has been playing for Buffalo, so will he be able to handle the playoff pressure? That's to be seen. So that will be a top matchup to watch every game of that matchup if you can. I don't know how late that's going to be.
Just final thoughts. What 2 teams do you think in each conference are going to go all the way?
I have Boston versus the Sharks. Boston versus Sharks finals.
I have Boston as well. I think, they've been probably the most stable team in the NHL all season long. But for me in the West, I have the Ducks. They've been a great team over the years, and I think their experience is going to pull them through. They do have the best record in the West,
yep. And
I think the teams with the best records this year are going to meet in the finals.
We'll post our official playoff brackets once it's all done, and we'll post that on Facebook. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll be back next week for sure with the episode on soccer. And